Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. I very much enjoyed the season. I actually had not seen it before, but now I want to go back and watch all the rest because I watched the whole season in like 2 days. So
Oh,
clearly I enjoyed it very much. So
thank you.
let me ask you, as having obviously written the book rather than the scripts, how much how involved are you, I guess, in the show? Like what do you have control over?
Um, Control, that's a good question. I think I have zero control, but I have a lot of control. I have zero control contractually or anything like
Right,
that.
right.
But I don't think people want to displease me. But it's not like that's ever happened or ever been a question. Where I'm involved in is conceptual. I don't know anything about camera angles or over 10 years of the show, I've gone from being a guy who thinks he knows what good acting is to actually having some skill in that. And I appreciate that growth in myself. But for the most part, I'm there when the question is, what do we do this year? What do we do with this season? Where are we going with these characters? And I love being in part of that discussion. And then it gravitates to a full writing room. And I visit the writing room semi regularly, but I actually don't have to be there. I don't have to have control because of the people that we have in there that revere these characters and they're not going to deviate from the spirit of what's in the books and what these characters are about. And so I don't have to worry about that. And now if you include the original show, we're in a writing room now for a 10th season. And so there's a lot of aspects that run like a machine. And I have a lot of trust in the people running that machine, and I don't have to worry about it. I just want to be there at the beginning so I have some say in where we're going.
Right. So how do you guys, I guess, and this may be partly what the writers' room, I guess, does together, but how do you guys decide kind of like not only just that you're taking from the books directly, but like where, like what books you're pulling from? Because I'm assuming that to some extent, some of the seasons maybe aren't one, complete book. You pull from different places, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of books, and Amazon did a pretty unusual deal at the beginning where they just bought anything that comes down the pike. And so that
Yeah.
gives us the ability to go into the writing room and say, take what you need. And like we usually center on one book as the spine of a series, but then we take other stuff. And then, especially with Bosch Legacy, Money Chandler's only in one book. So what we're doing with Money Chandler, we're borrowing a little bit from Lincoln Lawyer Stories and so forth, but that's all new stuff. And Maddie Bosch, for example, is the head of the arc of Maddie Bosch in the books. She was a cop on the show before I made her a cop in my books. And so there's a lot of new stuff that comes out in the shows, and we continue, but the books are always there. We always look for stories from the books that are going to underline what we're trying to do with character. In this new season, Bosch is a longtime homicide detective for the LAPD, and he's very reticent to cross the aisle and work for a defense attorney, to work for a Money Chandler. And so that was the character journey that we wanted to explore in this book. How can we realistically and be authentic about having Harry Bosch make that transition?
Is there something particular from the books in the season that you can talk about that maybe you was like your favorite part brought from the books in this season? Or I don't know how much is spoilers and what you're allowed to say, but is there something that was drawn directly from it that you were really happy to get to see?
Well, I think one of the things that this whole thing is surrealistic. You sit in a room by yourself and write about a character. I first started writing about Harry Bosch, believe it or not, like in 1989, and the first book came out in 92. So to have something you did that long ago without, when I was writing that, I didn't even know the book would get published. And so now 20 some Bosch books later and 10 years of a TV show, it's amazing. But there's always something that like something that comes out of a scene in the book that when it's realized on film, I'm like almost like a fan. I go like, wow, that's pretty cool that you got that right and you chose that. And there's a couple of those scenes. I mean, Harry Bosch takes on this case of a guy that Chandler thinks is falsely accused, and he starts putting together that she might be right. And there's like a scene where he explores, he's knocking on doors in an apartment building, and he gets a clue that kind of pivots his thinking on the case. And that was really cool to see put together. And I'm sorry, I don't remember which episode that is, but we did it. And that was like one of those moments where I get like this immense rush of surreal fulfillment, you know.
And that's going to be really cool. I was going to say, when you originally wrote this way back then, are the ideas all fictional? Like, is any of this from things that happened in real life or people you know, or anything that you sort of, I'm just curious if anything you pulled from other than your imagination.
No, I have to, this is where my big disclaimer is: I'm not a creative genius. I make up very little. I spend a lot of time with people that do this kind of work. They're all good storytellers, and I'm a collector. I throw out a big net, I collect stories, and then I think I have a facility to turn that into fiction and figure out how to place it in a story, how it becomes the overarching plot, or as an anecdote, or as a memory. But almost everything that I put into my books is derivative from something. And like I said, most of the time it's stories I've been told. I think I'm orally inspired. I hear a story and the fervor, like a detective talks about a case where they got emotionally connected, the fervor of their storytelling inspires me. But at the same time, there'll be stuff that's in the news and that will pique my interest, and that I'll find a way of taking part of it or all of it and turning it into fictional story. So it comes from all over. But
What
not
was character? I was going to say, was Bosch himself? Was he partially inspired by anybody in your life? I mean, you don't necessarily have to tell me who. I'm just curious. Like, was he?
No, he's
he?
I was a journalist for a long time. I was a police reporter, so I talked to literally dozens and dozens of different detectives every week, and so I kind of feel like I took from all of them. But I'm also very inspired by my predecessors, writers of crime novels and TV shows and movies. So he was really a lot of stuff put into a blender, mixed up and poured out as hopefully a semi-unique character named Harry Bosch. But there's no one, he's not a single source inspired character by any means.
Well, now in your words, tell fans, like, what can they expect this season, like story wise? Not necessarily book, but just kind of what can we look forward to?
There's a lot of, well, we spend the first two episodes answering the question of what happened to Maddie Bosch, because we had a huge cliffhanger at the end of season one. And we pay that off pretty quickly in two episodes, that with amazing performances from our three main leads. But within those two episodes, we set up the story that comes from the book called The Crossing. And that's where Chandler entices Harry Bosch to cross the aisle and work with her in the defense of someone she believes is wrongly accused of a murder. And it's a very heinous murder. And, you know, Harry's diving into that, tips over a lot of dominoes that draw all three of our leads into the storyline. And it always ends or heads towards a pretty riveting set piece out at the Marina del Rey that involves Bosch and his daughter, and life and death choices. So there's some big things happening in this case, in this series, and in this season, and in this case, that but we're always mindful of entwining all our three characters into the same story.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. I hope there's more coming, and I'm going to go back and watch all that. There's lots to watch. So I have lots to go back and see.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.